They don't hear it coming. There's no roar of a jet dropping iron, no artillery thump echoing across the steppe. Just a low, predatory growl on the radar, too late, followed by a surgical explosion that rips the heart out of a command post or snaps a bridge like a matchstick. Russia's armor doesn't die in a Hollywood fireball. It dies when its fuel train never arrives, when its pontoon bridge is ash, when its brigade HQ is a smoking crater and the battalion on the road suddenly has no orders, no comms, and no way forward. That's the quiet, relentless logic of the UK's Storm Shadow. Not just killing tanks, but starving them, strangling the arteries that make armor move. Storm Shadow is the missile the Kremlin pretended not to fear, until it started carving holes in the geography of occupation. In May 2023, Britain became the first nation to arm Ukraine with a Western long-range cruise missile, a deep strike scalpel designed for hardened high-value targets. Range: publicly, over 250 kilometers. Payload: a BROACH warhead built to punch into reinforced concrete and then detonate with malice. Delivery: Ukrainian Su-24 bombers, resurrected like museum pieces, now carrying the most dangerous standoff weapon in the theater. This wasn't just a new missile. It was a new map of what was vulnerable hundreds of kilometers behind the front. The results arrived in headlines, some that Moscow still pretends never happened. Bridges on the Chonhar line to Crimea hit and re-hit, choking one of Russia's most critical supply routes to the southern front. A headquarters here, an ammunition depot there, and then the crescendo, the strike on the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Sevastopol. A brazen daylight demolition that signaled the peninsula's rear wasn't sanctuary anymore. You don't need to blow up every tank if you can rip out the rail nodes, staff headquarters, and repair hubs that make those tanks matter. From the start, Storm Shadow's real trick wasn't just range, it was reliability. Ukrainian officers bragged early about near-perfect hit rates, and even later, as Russian defenses adapted, they conceded this British missile was stubbornly hard to jam. It doesn't ride only on GPS. It carries its own brain, its own maps, its own way of finding the target when the airwaves turn to sludge. That resilience kept Russia guessing which base, which bridge, which bunker was next on the list. In a war where electronic warfare can turn miracle weapons into duds, Storm Shadow stayed in the conversation. The platform mattered too. Ukraine's swing-wing Su-24s weren't pretty, but they were compatible, and most importantly, survivable when launching from distance. Official photos of the fencer wearing Storm Shadow underscored a simple point. If an airframe can carry a smart weapon from standoff, the airframe lives to do it again tomorrow. No need to joust with S-300s at treetop height when you can fire outside the envelope and let the missile do the dying for you. Then came a political shift with strategic teeth. In 2024, Britain's Foreign Secretary said the quiet part out loud: Ukraine could use British-supplied weapons to hit targets inside Russia. Restrictions lifted. A red line erased. Soon after, Western media and Russian officials alike reported Storm Shadow salvos crossing the border for the first time, a psychological as much as tactical escalation. Kremlin spokesman blustered. Air raid sirens did the real talking. And in 2025, London didn't just keep supplying. London and Paris rebooted production, ordering more Storm Shadows while kicking off the next-gen deep strike successor. This is how you tell a dictator that attrition is a two-way street. Let's zoom out. What does a deep strike missile have to do with slaughtering Russian armor? Everything. A tank is a hungry, thirsty beast with fragile lifelines. Rails, depots, ferries, bridges, HQs, repair echelons, and fuel farms. Wreck the bridges over the Sivash or crater a rail node feeding Tokmak, and that shiny T-90M becomes a very expensive bunker. Take out the headquarters where artillery taskings are coordinated, and the BTG in the field suddenly fights blind. Storm Shadow is the scalpel that cuts the tendons. It turns Russia's supposed mass into stranded mass. Ask any tanker, mobility kills are still kills. And yet the UK's support didn't end with cruise missiles. If Storm Shadow is the long arm, drones are the swarm, fast, cheap, and increasingly decisive. In June 2025, Britain pledged to deliver 100,000 drones by April 2026, a tenfold jump that reflects a battlefield reality. Uncrewed systems have inverted the economy of war. A 400-pound quad with a shaped charge can delete a 3 million-pound tank. A long-range Ukrainian strike drone can torch a refinery and do more to Russia's logistics in a night than a month of artillery. London's bet on quantity with smarter quality has been one of the war's greatest force multipliers. The drone surge isn't just about dumping boxes at the border. The UK and Ukraine are moving into co-production and specialization. Two strands stand out. First, interceptor drones. Airborne goalkeepers built to hunt Shaheds, cruise missiles, and reconnaissance UAVs at a fraction of a SAM shot. Britain and Ukraine have announced mass production of a Ukrainian-designed interceptor under a new tech-sharing deal, aiming to ship thousands a month. British officials boast they're cheaper than the targets they kill, exactly the kind of asymmetry that makes accountants smile and adversaries sweat. Second, Britain is helping integrate bespoke mobile air defense kits like Gravehawk, a hush-hush containerized system that repurposes air-to-air missiles into nimble point defense, a perfect companion for frontline brigades living under a permanent drone sky. And it's working. Ukrainian officials credit interceptors with swatting down swarms during some of the largest nighttime barrages of the war, soaking off drones so the Patriot batteries can save million-dollar missiles for ballistic threats. The more interceptors Ukraine fields, the more it can trade pennies for rubles in the air, driving down Russia's cost imposition game. In this calculus, Britain's push to industrialize drone defense isn't a side quest. It's a strategic pivot. There's a reason UK ministers and think tankers talk about drones in almost evangelical terms. Parliament debates now openly cite metrics you wouldn't have heard 3 years ago. Drones causing more casualties than traditional artillery in phases of the war. Drones being exponentially more lethal per shot than unguided rounds. Drones saturating the front in the thousands each day. Not every claim survives peer review, and sober voices warn against drone-tastic hype. But the broad arc is undeniable. Cheap autonomy has shifted the battlefield's center of gravity, and Britain is arming Ukraine to surf that wave, not drown beneath it. Set this against Storm Shadow's longer game, and the picture sharpens. Deep strikes force the Russian command to disperse, to relocate, to harden, slowing tempo and stretching air defenses thin. Drones exploit the seams, finding armor idling in traffic jams that never should have existed, sniping repair crews, punishing exposed columns whose escort EW trucks were just destroyed in a strike 200 kilometers away. It's a tag team, the Scalpel and the Swarm. On the technical side, Storm Shadow's design makes Russian countermeasures a headache. Terrain referencing navigation lets it slither through GPS jamming, while the two-stage warhead makes a mockery of light cover. You can stack sandbags on your ammo bunker and pray. The missile will punch through, then blow up where it hurts. Russia has downed some. No weapon is a ghost forever. But even intercepts carry a cost. You fire a limited stock of expensive SAMS at a missile that costs Britain less than the target it's going to destroy. That's not a great business model for Moscow. Operationally, the Sevastopol HQ strike did more than dent a roof. It shattered an illusion. Crimea had been treated as an untouchable logistics platform, a safe rear for refit and coordination. In one strike, Ukraine told the Black Sea Fleet, "You're in the battle space." Weeks earlier, a precision hit in Sevastopol's dry dock had already maimed a Kilo-class submarine and a landing ship, proof that deep strike missiles were turning prized assets into permanent yard queens. One joke going around Ukrainian channels at the time: Crimea, now with open plan offices. Dark humor, sure, but morale matters, and Storm Shadow delivered a message to both sides about who could reach whom. Now about that title, Slaughters Russian Armor. It's not clickbait if you understand cause and effect. Storm Shadow doesn't hunt tanks in the tree line. It makes sure the fuel truck never starts its engine. It forces Russia to reroute across longer, more vulnerable roads. It collapses a bridge, so an entire mechanized column must wait under a sky buzzing with Ukrainian FPVs. It atomizes the brigade staff that would coordinate combined arms pushes. Every immobilized T-90 stuck behind a broken river crossing is a dead tank walking. The kill chain starts at a launch pylon and ends at a burned-out hulk that never reached the line. Britain has also framed this as a bet on industrial stamina, restarting Storm Shadow production with France, upgrading the lines, ordering new lots, and launching a successor program signals staying power. Aid isn't just what you send this quarter, it's the assembly line you keep humming when the war drags into winters 3 and 4. London is doing the unglamorous work of stockpiles and replacement, even as it keeps the missile pipeline to Ukraine open. That's why these announcements matter more than ribbon-cutting ceremonies. They are promises that the scalpel won't run dry. Meanwhile, the drone piece is scaling like software. The 100,000 drone pledge isn't a stunt, it's a statement that the UK understands the war's arithmetic. Every cheap quad that knocks out a tank sight package, every interceptor that swats a Shahed for a fraction of a NASAMS shot, buys Ukraine time, territory, and options. Joint UK-Ukrainian production shrinks lead times, adapts models to field feedback, and insulates supply from political weather. Made together beats please export every time. Tactically, British-backed drone warfare has stabilized sectors that might otherwise have buckled. Drone ISR keeps Russian armor from moving in daylight. FPVs pick off recovery vehicles, creating a graveyard effect where damaged tanks become lure and trap. Interceptors preserve critical power and air defense nodes, stopping Russia's strategy of terror through blackouts from fully taking hold. And when Ukrainian brigades do counterpunch, they can synchronize with Storm Shadow. Cut the bridge at 2 a.m., launch the assault at 5 a.m. to make sure what's left of the enemy can't reinforce in time. This is modern combined arms. The missile that carves, the drone that hammers, the brigade that exploits. Let's pause for a reality check, because sober beats smug. Russia adapts, air defenses redeploy, decoys proliferate, bridges get repaired faster, stocks of Western missiles aren't infinite, and even Ukraine's drone miracle faces attrition, EW, and pilot fatigue. British officials themselves warn against thinking drones alone will win the next war. Fair, but none of that negates the core advantage the UK has helped create, the ability to push precise pain, repeatedly, at scale, beyond the front line, forcing a bigger enemy to constantly rebuild the rear. In a contest of logistics, that's how you grind. Somewhere in Moscow, a colonel has written a stern memo explaining that bridges should stop being so bridge-shaped. Russian staff officers now schedule HQ relocation drills the way office workers schedule coffee breaks. Every time a storm shadow hits a depot, an accountant in the Russian MOD invents a new euphemism for missing inventory. Dark, yes, but wars are won partly by making your opponent's bureaucracy cry. Strategically, Britain's Storm Shadow and Drone Gambit punches above the UK's weight for 3 reasons. 1. It targets Russia's critical vulnerabilities, rear echelons, energy infrastructure, leadership nodes, without demanding a massive Ukrainian air fleet or a NATO no-fly zone. 2. It scales with Ukrainian innovation. As Kyiv iterates drones and tactics, Britain funds what works and helps industrialize it. 3. It reshapes deterrence beyond Ukraine. Every autocrat watching, Tehran, Pyongyang, Beijing, now has to game out whether their sanctuary really is one when a partner can move London, Paris, and Warsaw into a common production rhythm and strike doctrine. There's also the political signaling. When London greenlit the use of British weapons on Russian soil, it told Europe's fence-sitters that ambiguity was out and consequences were in. When it restarted Storm Shadow lines, it told allies that pacing munitions, not photo ops, would decide the war's middle innings. When it promised 100,000 drones and then stood up UK-Ukraine factories to build interceptors at scale, it told everyone watching that the free world can still outproduce terror if it chooses to. That kind of consistency changes adversaries' calculus and friends' courage. So what happens next? Expect more of the same, only faster. More bridges collapse at inconvenient hours. More repair yards discover inconvenient craters. More Russian armor spends more time parked, camouflaged, and terrified of quadcopters than actually maneuvering. And as the UK and France converge on a Storm Shadow successor, longer reach, smarter seeker, nastier punch, the rear will feel even less rear. If you're a Russian logistics officer, this is the part where you develop a sudden interest in early retirement. Back in Ukraine's skies, interceptor drones and mobile air defense teams will grow teeth. The metric that matters isn't how many were shot down, it's how cheaply and how often can you keep the lights on and the factories running. Britain's wager is that a fleet of agile, expendable defenders, fed by joint production and field feedback, can keep Ukraine's cities breathing and its brigades supplied without bankrupting its allies. That's sustainability, not just solidarity. And if you want a single image to carry away from this, picture a Russian tank battalion idling on a road at 3 a.m., waiting for a fuel convoy that was supposed to cross at Chonhar. The bridge is gone. The replacement ferry never launched. The staff that would improvise a workaround is off the net because their HQ just relocated again. Overhead, a Ukrainian drone loiters, broadcasting coordinates to a fire direction center that still has ammo because the Shaheds last night died cheaply, intercepted in layers. No epic tank duel, just a column that is already lost before dawn. That's what British Storm Shadows and British-backed drones do together. They make the enemy late to the battle, and sometimes they cancel the battle entirely. Here's the punchline history we'll care about. The UK didn't just send a weapon, it exported a method: precision where it hurts, production where it counts, permission where it matters. It paired a deep strike scalpel with a drone swarm and wrote a manual for starving armored offensives. That doctrine has already carved its initials into Crimea and beyond. And until the day Russian tanks stop rolling, it will keep carving. In the end, tanks don't fear missiles or drones. They fear irrelevance. Britain helped make that fear real. So, question for the road. When the next autocrat counts his divisions and dreams of a blitz, will he also count every bridge, depot, and HQ within 300 kilometers and ask himself, how many can I lose before the armor I love becomes statues on a roadside? Because in Ukraine, the answer is already written in smoke.